Afternoon, everyone. This is group number one from Aviation Safety and Security, and we are going to show you and let you know more about flight accident 6136 of China Northern Airline. And it was a very tragic accident, like most of the accidents in the world, unfortunately. So this airline was created in 1990 and disappeared in 2003 because it merged with China Southern Airline. So this flight 6136 was a flight from Beijing International Airport to Dalian International Airport. On May 7, 2002, the plane crashed into the bay near Dalian shortly after the pilot reported fire on board, killing all 103 passengers and 9 crew members. It was the second air disaster involving People's Republic of China aircraft in less than a month after the Air China Flight 129 disaster on April 15. The cause of the fire was later determined to be an arson. An arson is the criminal act of deliberately setting fire to property. So, the domestic flight 6136 of China Northern Airline was being operated by an MD-82 jetliner. It is a twin-engine model first manufactured by McDonnell Douglas before the company was absorbed by Boeing. This aircraft can carry up to 172 passengers. On the day of the accident, it took off at 8:37 p.m. local time from Beijing, and it was due to arrive to Dalian at 9:40 p.m. local time. But at 9:20 p.m., the captain reported fire in the cabin to Dalian Tower and requested an emergency landing about 20 kilometers or 12 miles from the Dalian airport. Then 4 minutes later, radio contact was lost and the aircraft disappeared from the radar screen. And the aircraft crashed into the Yellow Sea 10 kilometers off the coast of Dalian. While the tragedy was hopelessly occurring, eyewitnesses on a nearby fishing boat said, they saw a plane with fire and smoke that crashed into the sea and shattered into two parts. Furthermore, a policeman said that he saw a plane flying in low circles just before the crash. Afterwards, 1 week after the disaster on May 14, the black box was recovered by researchers at the sea. But the day after the crash, more than 60 bodies had been pulled from Dalian Bay in the morning, and debris in the water included a charred food service pushcart broken in half. The flight included people from Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, India, France, and South Korea. And more than 40 vessels they were called to participate in the investigation, and the Sea Rescue Center in Dalian said fishermen searched through the night using searchlights, and they were joined later by 2 Chinese naval vessels. So, the accident investigation results were published on December 8 of the same year, and it was found out that the first reason of the accident was of a passenger named Zhang Pilin, who set fire to the passenger cabin with gasoline, causing the plane to lose control and crash. This is definitely an intentional act of causing severe harm. The truth behind the sad accident is that just a few days before the accident, this passenger had taken out 7 aircraft insurance policies for a total of 1.5 million yuan, which is $187,000. Pilin had flown from Dalian to Beijing and returned to Dalian on flight 6136 the same day. According to the video monitor record, he had spent several hours smoking cigarettes in the waiting hall of Beijing airport. He purchased 2 insurance policies before leaving Dalian, and he purchased the 5 remaining in Beijing. Some water bottles filled with gasoline were found in his apartment. However, no detailed accident report has been provided due to because it's considered like a highly sensitive topic in China. So there's something else that comes to that accident is the controversial fact that denounces an interview with the Chinese journalist Jiang Weiping in the Sunday Express, and he claimed that the destruction of the flight 6136 was ordered by Bo Xilai and his wife Gu Kalai in order to silence Li Yanfeng, who is the wife of Han Xiaoguang, and he is a wealthy hotelier and ally of Bo's political opponents. So we have already a conflict between those two very wealthy and high positioned people. And on that day, Mrs. Li, so the wife of that wealthy hotelier, was returning from Beijing after petitioning for the release of her jailed husband, and she was allegedly carrying letters pleading for his release, which were written by the daughters of Communist Party General Secretary and the former president.
Good afternoon, class. My name is Brian Andino, and I'm going to be looking at SMS in this accident. So, as unfortunate as it is, we have to look past the loss of life in order to make the necessary corrections to prevent something like this from happening again. So this is where SMS, or Safety Management System, actually comes in. So based on the compiled information that was found on this accident, it seems to indicate that a system such as this one was either weak or just non-existent in this airline, and not only that, but others in the Chinese aviation industry. So there was already a reform that was being planned for that industry. However, there would be, to explain that reform, there was a major merger that was going to be done from 9 Chinese domestic airlines. They were going to be merged into 3. And so with this accident, there was a delay to that merger in order to address the issues that plagued the industry for that time. So as a clear example of the initial implementation of safety policy, the Premier of China at the time, Su Rongji, he expressed that most serious accidents were actually caused by a lack of proper management. So he's also quoted as saying that routine examination work should be strengthened and activities breaking safety rules and regulations should be punished, end quote. With these statements, thorough national safety examination was conducted, not only in the civil aviation, but as I mentioned, other industries, other major enterprises in China. And in direct relation to the hazards and risk of this flight, there were major things that were ignored industry-wide that have now been corrected. For instance, as mentioned previously, the fact that a passenger brought a water bottle filled with gasoline is unheard of nowadays. Through a number of factors, at least here in the United States, many strict safety guidelines and even luggage checks have been implemented into flight safety and security. For example, TSA wouldn't even allow a water bottle on board anymore if you brought it with you to the airport. On the other hand, one other theory was that the plane might have ignited due to a short circuit, and had this been the case, through the implementation of safety risk management in that SMS, with a case such as this one, the airline had a responsibility of addressing the possibility of a resurgence of this program. So one way it could have been fixed in that case would be a checkup before every flight or day of that electrical system on board the aircraft. Also, through safety assurance, these methods could be revised and analyzed in order to predict what new incidents might occur and lead to a potentially fatal mistake. Unfortunately, there is little information regarding this airline when it comes to SMS, and if we wanted to give a clear example regarding its safety promotion, the reality is that it would be hard to do so. However, its leadership was certainly scrutinized by the government, and as mentioned previously, right after this accident having followed other unfortunate events, there was even a major study into the safety practices of various industries, which, although not directly linked to the airline executives and their course of action in response to these events, it's still a positive outcome from the governing body itself. This is an even bigger impact than just one airline wanting to change, as other airlines and industries alike across China might have had a positive drive to rethink how they look at safety. There's also the fact that this airline merged as part of an industry reform in the country. Now being part of China Southern Airlines, it can also be said that its new leadership has adapted very well to past concerns. So China Southern Airlines has employed an effective SMS where, according to their 2011 Corporate Social Responsibility Report, they have established a strict safety audit system. So one example was given was that in that year, they conducted safety audits on 10 operational systems and identified 497 with safety risks. This report also details that they have created major categories for establishing safety goals. These are flight safety, air safety, aircraft maintenance, food safety, and ground safety. And with this, it's safe to say that although through a different leadership, the reaction of such has had a positive outcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Alondra Barreto and I will be analyzing the accident using a causation model. So, which of the three different causation models would best describe and analyze the accident? According to the different type of causation models that there are, the Swiss cheese is the one that fits perfect for either identify the different consequences that led this aircraft accident to a fatality. This model consists of different barriers that each one represents a situation with holes that led the situation a step further to be more than worse. Each situation takes a step to the next barrier if it is not taken care of or improvements. And these models try to identify what many other causes or circumstances led this mistake to occur instead of a particular mistake. There are two types of failures, active failure and latent failure, in which in this case it was an active failure because it linked directly to the accident. Also, there are four types of failures: organizational influences, unsafe supervision, preconditions for unsafe acts, and the unsafe acts themselves. This accident that ended in a fatality had those four types of failures. The first one, organization influence, is seen where the lack of regulation at the airport of Beijing was high by not confiscating sharp objects, airplane luggage, and passengers being required to remove shoes and part of their clothing to be examined. Better regulations were being made after the accident had taken place. Those type of organization influence let understood that any object could be passed and taken to the airplane. But after the accident, the organization influence took an expansion in its regulation by confiscating certain type of objects and new rules. As that barrier failed, it led to the next barrier of unsafe supervision, where Sam Feeling, the guy who set fire to the passenger cabin, could pass the airplane with a water bottle filled with gasoline. The supervision failed with the workers on not checking what his water bottle was, what was the liquid, and why it wasn't of a clear color. Also, the supervision for the act in which he was taking action to set the cabin on fire. It lacked sufficient training for safety on employees. The next barrier is seen as ignorance from part of Sang Feeling, Bo Xilai, and his wife Gu Kailai, by not taking into consideration the life of all the other people in that flight as a precondition for unsafe acts. Another precondition for unsafe acts was when the radio contact was lost and the aircraft disappears from the radar screens, losing track to guide the pilots on where to land as an emergency. There are certain types of anger and malice emotions. The last barrier on the unsafe acts we can see on omission on the checklist items for the bags and personal things on both the airport and airplane. In summary, the switches model is saying the right in order. Its barrier consisted of unsafe regulations, rules and training, lack of safety materials for checklists and supervision of hazard objects, lack of supervision for unsafe acts of passengers, and failure of the radio contact system. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Geraldine Casiana and I'm gonna talk about of the upgrade in the airport after this accident. First of all, this accident caused a lot of economic impact in the airline operation. The airline lose approximately 460 million of yuan in the collective refund of passengers. This is approximately 72 million of USD dollars. Before the accident, the security of airport does not have the necessary equipment to distinguish what type of liquid the passenger luggage is. According this man, Tom Bayantin, chief correspondent of Oriental Aviation, is nearly impossible to detect in any saboteur because a fire can be started with any flammable liquid, for example, alcohol, brandy, hairspray, or etc. But after the accident, the Civil Aviation Administration of China, that is the aviation authority in China, and investigate the accident and the incident, upgrade his procedure of security and inspection. Now, the airport security equipment is more effectiveness, and they spent about 800 million of yuan to upgrade the cabin and install airborne prevention and control system. This is approximately 125 million of USA dollars. Airport security confiscate sharp object, X-ray luggage, and something that required travelers to remove the shoes and clothing to examine it separately. The strictness security is varies at different airports in Chinese. And finally, this airline was disappeared in October of that year, 2002. And this is all that we know about the accident. The authority in China have not given any statement of the safety upgrade. And thanks for watching.